Ramey, let me be your partner.
Who's your tailor?
But first,
let's meet our contestants.
Going down.
If the bat wants to play, we'll play.
was that over the top?
Don't work too late.
You forgot the part where you kissed the girl.
The real game begins.
Courage now. Truth always. Batman forever.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham.
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
I'm Batman.
Hello and welcome to episode 170 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor as well as a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows over at batmanpodcastnetwork.com and follow our Twitter at BatPodNetwork as well as BOF's Instagram at Batman on Film. I'm the host of this episode of the BOF podcast, Ryan Haas, and today we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of 1995's Batman Forever. And I can't do that alone, so let's meet our contestants. Behind curtain number one is Peter Verra. How are you doing?
If the bat wants to play, we'll play. And
I don't remember that line.
Well, they
Maybe
cut it.
Schumacher cut.
It was in a music video.
Or I think it was in some commercials too.
It was one of those glorious scenes from the mysterious Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. But hey, how's everybody?
Good. Behind curtain number two is Ryan Lauer. How are you doing?
Joygasm! Fabulous. I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for having me on, sir.
Good. And that's not everybody on the show. Below these contestants is
a watery grave.
Not just a watery grave, but it's the editor-in-chief and founder of Batman on Film, Jett himself, Bill Jett Ramey. How are you doing?
I'm good. Excited to talk about. I can make an argument that, I guess to myself, this may be my favorite of the four Burton Schumacher films.
It's worth discussing.
Yeah, I could make an argument for it, but I will sing its praises today and critique it when it's needed to be critiqued. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this movie.
Me too. I think we've all been getting psyched up to talk about it for a couple weeks now because it is the anniversary. And,
oh yeah.
All of us in our chats and texts and tweets, we've just kind of been talking about Batman Forever a lot, which doesn't happen too often, But every time, but every time it does, I think I always get something new out of it. But before we get into the discussion, I thought it would be appropriate to briefly talk about the passing of legendary Batman editor-writer Denny O'Neil. He passed away last week at the ripe old age of 81, and without him, I don't think we get Batman as we know him today. What do you guys have anything to say about Denny?
Quite possible. The first Batman comic I actually remember that I remember reading, and I mean actually reading. When I say reading, because before that, mostly I was just looking at the panels. I was about 6, 7, 8 years old. Batman number 251. The story is the Joker's 5-Way Revenge. I remember, which he wrote, and you have that famous Neil Adams cover. I have the poster of it hanging on my office wall to this day. I remember thinking, this isn't like the TV show that was my conduit to the world of Batman, was the Adam West show. But even at age 7, I remember vividly thinking, yeah, this is different. And I was, an avid reader of Batman ever since, and I cut my teeth on those comics in the 70s, the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run of the 70s. So yeah, so it was he is on my Mount Rushmore of Batman writers, and he could be considered to be on the Mount Rushmore of everything Batman as well, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, he just goes down the gamut of like I said, like without him we don't get the modern Batman, and that's not just because he wrote the character. He brought the character back to his roots along with artists like Neil Adams, but not just as a writer. Then when he gets to be an editor, he brings other creative people into the fold, other writers, other artists, and he becomes like this architect of the Batman universe for years.
He sent Robin's ass off to college, Dick Grayson.
Then he killed the second one.
To Hudson University. He moved Batman. He moved Bruce Wayne to the penthouse in that same issue from 1969. I forget exactly what. Maybe it was Detective. This happened. I don't remember. I'm sorry, Michael Uslan. He would chastise me for not knowing the specific issue, but. Yeah, he and brought Batman back to his dark and serious roots at that point. So yeah, you're right, Ryan. I don't know if we would have the Batman as we know him today without Denny O'Neil.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty much just the introduction of the character, and where I've obviously I started with '89 and Batman the Animated Series, but as soon as I started digging deeper, was always into that. Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run in the 70s, and just where they took it, Five-Way Revenge and stuff, and the whole. Neil Adams' artwork is some of my favorites, so I'm constantly being paired with him and Denny, and then Denny did some fantastic Green Lantern stories as well with Neil, so they kind of took over. They were more than just Batman. They did a lot of DCU stuff, so just universes in general,
Yeah, the Question, and
it's just they're just rooted in the history of comics, and Denny's just. I'm very fortunate. About 3 years ago, I was able to meet Denny O'Neil, get him to sign my Five-Way Revenge at East Coast Comic Con, so I have that memory. So that's great, and it's just, it's sad because he's someone he's left such an imprint on Batman, and then other things in general. He's also the man who named Optimus Prime, so he's got his hands everywhere. So it's crazy to think that kind of a creative force is now not with us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, like Bill, I have the Joker's Five-Way Revenge poster. There's also some kind of wooden matte image piece of art to hang up that I have hung up in my room as well. But reading a bunch of his early work, especially Neil Adams, that was always exciting. But I think the past few years, it's been fun for me to kind of read books and read interviews with him, basically about him working behind the scenes in a sense, and being that editor at DC covering Batman. And that's been kind of a fascinating trip as well. And like I'd mentioned to Pete before, I'd recently just gotten the Absolute Batman Year One, and in one of the versions they include basically the questions to the editor at the end of each issue, and it's all questions and answered by Denny O'Neil, and those are really fun to read about, and then to see his involvement in getting the Legends of the Dark Knight title up and running, and and him working behind the scenes on Nightfall and Gathering and stuff like that, and then to just watch interviews with Denny O'Neil and just listening to him talk about the old days and times. He's such a great storyteller in that regard too. So in addition to his comic writing, I think he's just, a fascinating storyteller in general.
Just truly one of the greats. I mean, you can't say enough about the man. I mean, he's just shaped and molded, the greatest hero in our eyes, obviously. But like I said earlier, just a man who's clearly a creative force, just story upon story, and just details and villains, and not only is it Batman himself, but just the cast of characters around him that he wrote so well. It's amazing what he was able to do.
You don't get Ra's al Ghul or Leslie Tompkins or
that's all
things
him.
like that. Yeah, it's all Denny. So yeah, I mean, his last couple stories, I mean, he was still writing stuff. He has a story in this latest Joker anniversary special that just came out, and I believe the last thing that will probably be published, like a comic book story, is he's got a story, I believe, with Mike Grell in the upcoming Green Lantern anniversary special too. So
well, that's good. That's a good send off. I mean, he was such a big part of those Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, Green Arrow stories. So
yeah,
it's fitting.
Yeah. And, if anybody's been following me on Twitter, they've probably seen this, or, it's been a thing that I've been teasing for forever and a day. But I do have a currently unpublished 3-hour audio interview with Dennis O'Neil that I did a couple years ago that's
great.
That I've been tweaking and editing and stuff, to be on to put up as a podcast. So that's obviously still coming, and probably even a little bit more poignant now that it'll be, weirdly new content. Getting to listen to 3 hours of Denny O'Neil go through his whole life and stuff.
Just
so
sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those like sit back and listen to him talk for 3 hours kind of thing. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's something that everybody that's got to interview him with me we talk about it all the time, like, oh, when you're gonna finally release that thing, edit it, get it done, but it'll get done. So that's a little tease. So I just wanted to get that out there before we get into Batman Forever. So let's do that. BOF has been celebrating it quite a bit over the past few weeks. Pete, I think you're kind of leading the charge on that a little bit. You want to talk about the things that you've done, and you can kind of start off the conversation.
Yeah, it's funny, like, with everything that's going on, it's like, you've been thinking, well, I've been wanting the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever for how long? So it's a little interesting. It's a fun little thing.
What are you talking about, Pete? What is this Schumacher cut?
There's the not necessarily the darker, but more the psychological aspect of Batman Forever that was kind of cut off for the more toyetic and kid-friendly movie that Joel and Akiva Goldsman made. So there's a small group of fans that started a little online campaign to see if they could become the new HBO Max fad. And so this kid, Matt, I think his name's Matt Ballard, he basically just kind of vocalized the movement, and it's just ironic that it happens so much to be the 25th anniversary of Batman Forever. So it's, it's just kind of like, destiny in a sense, like the stars aligned. But I'm pumped. I mean, I've been listening to a bunch of music videos and Seal and U2, and it just, Batman Forever brings back a lot of fond memories for me. And I've always been fond, whatever cut of this movie I watch, I love it. The theatrical cut I love. I can't help it. Everything, there's certain things that bother me, but there's other things that aren't that big of a deal. But I'm into it. I love Forever. I can't get enough of it. I mean, the action figures were great. It was a good time for me. It was my first Batmania, so it was a really good time.
Yeah,
as
the marketing and the hype. I remember being
pretty, it was all over,
pretty big, pretty. I don't know. I think we're all in slightly different spots in our lives at the time, but I remember it feeling big, like a bigger event than Batman Returns. But it's hard for me to know for sure. I mean, I was like 8 years old when that movie came out, when Batman Forever came out. So that was the first. I saw Returns in the theater, but I was really young. So
I
Batman
thought the toy stuff was really what stood out to me as a kid. Like, there were so many more action figures.
Well, it wasn't just the toys. It was the toys and the McDonald's tie-in stuff. And I remember going into the comic book store and seeing like the trading cards with all the foil. And there was just a lot that they were pushing, because Warner Brothers clearly wanted a more widely marketable product. And back in those days, that's kind of, once you get to the Dark Knight trilogy, there's a little less of that. They don't need to rely on a movie selling everything, but they definitely did back in the 90s. You had video games, you had all the stuff. So, but yeah, I remember being super excited to see the movie in the theater at the time. And I didn't really have any problems with it. So.
Well, no, I mean, like, well, it's like as a kid. We're all. Bill's been around the block. Like, he's the OG here. You know, he remembers '89 Batmania. So, like, I'm always curious to see what Bill. Like, I remember it as a kid. You were in what? How old were you for Batmania '89?
I was 23.
So 23. Okay, so you were
I just graduated college. Yeah.
So what was Batmania '95 like compared to Batmania '89?
Nothing like '89.
Not at all. Like it was, just, but like, did you feel like maybe it was like you were like, oh, this is a familiar feeling? Like, what was it? Because like you're like not liking Returns, so like this is totally different.
No. There was hype around the film, certainly, because it was Batman. It was kind of still riding on the coattails of Batman '89. Even though Batman Returns was,
it's so different than '89. It
still was not well received, but I think the fact, it's just look. There's only three moments or three instances of true Batmania, and it was with back in 1966 with the Batman TV series. It was Batman '89, and then there was The Dark Knight. Those three are on different levels. With Forever, there was a lot of hype because of Val Kilmer, who was he was coming off of Tombstone, very hot, hot actor. From that, he played Jim Morrison in The Doors.
And Jim Carrey.
And Jim Carrey coming part of the cast and so forth. So, just there was hype for it. It was a Batman film, a lot of stuff on TV, all your tie-ins, McDonald's and so forth. But it wasn't on the '89 level for sure. But I mean, personally, I was extremely excited for it because I do not like Batman Returns and I was majorly disappointed in that film, and I just when I saw it, it just said it felt different, and I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy watching Batman Returns, and
So let's talk to me here. Okay. Now you're sitting in the theater and the credits roll in and they go zoom, 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 and then there's a logo and then he comes out of the Batcave and there's all the blue and everything and you're in Barbara Ling's Gotham City. Compared to what you were used to the previous two films, what was that like to just be exposed to this? It's different. There's colors and there's neons and it's a different experience.
That's the thing. Is like how you've talked before about getting into Batman '89, reading all the magazines and soaking up as much information as possible before the movie because you were excited about it. How much did you get into Batman Forever before you watched it?
Yeah, it was a different era. There was no Batman on Film website back then, but I remember when I saw the news report on Entertainment Weekly, Entertainment Tonight. I'm sorry. That Val Kilmer had replaced Michael Keaton. I was actually, honestly, I was still no. I was thinking '89, but I was at a bar, happy hour, and they had a TV, and they had Entertainment Tonight on, and there was a Bat logo, there was Keaton, and then they showed Val Kilmer, and I was going, what is this about? And then it clicked. Michael Keaton's gone. Val Kilmer's going to be Batman. And then there was, and then after that, there were several reports about it. And I was kind of on board with it. I mean, really, because Returns had left such a bad taste in my mouth. And so I collected, all the I think Starlog and Comic Scene were still going on then, and you slowly got some images of from the film. I remember the first time it was in Entertainment Weekly. There was a shot of Val Kilmer as Batman, and it was actually it was a publicity still, but it's when he's on the safe, on the safe that's connected to the helicopter. So it was a shot from that. And so, yeah, I mean, I followed it as much as you could possibly follow it back then. And it was also the first time I went to a early screening. There was no such thing as early screenings. I even remember before that. And it on the, let's see, the 15th of June, 1995, the first showing was at 10 o'clock p.m., not midnight, but at 10 o'clock. And me and my friend went and saw it, and we both liked it a lot. I mean, and I saw it many times in the theater that summer, and I've watched it tons of times on DVD and then Blu-ray. One of the reasons why it holds a special place in my heart is that, okay, my first child, my daughter, was born a month later in July, and as they were growing up, that was the film we watched more than any other one that were live action. Was Batman Forever. So, yeah, I mean, hey, look, I love the film. So I'm not gonna make any apologies for it,
Yeah, I mean, I've always been such a huge fan of the movie in general. I remember when they re-released them for Batman 80, they did the original 4. And I remember leaving Batman Forever in just such a more positive attitude than I did Batman Returns. Batman Returns is kind of like, the Penguin dies, and it's a little more somber. Batman Forever ended on such a high note, and it was weird, like just riding that kind of like high out of the movie theater after seeing the movie, and it's like, okay, like now looking back at it, you're like, I get why they made this movie.
Yeah, and here's. Retroactively, people shit on the film. Either they weren't around or they were too young to remember, or they just selectively forgot that it was a huge hit in 1995.
Number
huge
2
hit.
film of the year.
Yeah. I mean, there was nobody going around hating on Batman Forever in 1995. It was a huge success all the way around. And even the periphery around it with that soundtrack is awesome. Had Seal,
yes, it is,
Kiss from a Rose, and U2.
Brandy,
those videos
Method Man,
playing on
Offspring.
MTV. I mean, yeah, it was an all around hit, and it gets unfairly lopped in with Batman and Robin, because I mean it's so Batman and Robin is basically the same plot points and the same story beats, just with the camp and the silliness kicked up a few, amped up, and with different actors, even with a different Batman. So, yeah, I mean, we can criticize Batman and Robin, and it deserves to be criticized, but Batman Forever is different. That's a whole different animal, and it just gets unfairly compared or lopped in as like they were this one thing, and they're really not.
There's a lot of heart in Batman Forever, and you could tell by how they made it, and you could tell also specifically by how they handled Dick Grayson. I mean, that origin is handled pretty perfectly. Sure, Chris O'Donnell's older than he should be, but whatever, it's Hollywood. Like, you got to take what you can get. But I mean, they could have totally have muffed Robin, and he came out looking like a champ. Let's be honest. By the end of that movie, like you reintroduced Robin to this universe, and you did what Bob Kane did back in the day when he introduced Robin. Like it's a momentum thing, and it's positive. Like Batman and Robin they just go together.
It's kind of crazy to see how well the movie turned out with everything that it, perception wise had against it. The Batman Returns left such a bad taste in the general audience's mouth, and then Warner Brothers decided to go a different way, and it was a reboot before there were really reboots of stuff. And the studio did kind of mandate, it's like, okay, we want, I think it was the Schumacher wanted Two-Face, but then the writers kind of had to figure out the other villain, and Warner Brothers was like, we want Riddler and we want Robin. They wanted Robin from the start, so like they weren't going to get around.
They've been trying to get Robin in for the last 2 movies.
Yeah, they've been trying to get Robin for the whole time, and so Yeah, so it's really interesting.
It was actually they actually cast someone for Robin in both for '89 and for Batman Returns, but he never was in the film. So
yeah. So it's interesting how they were able to kind of make all those elements work and get it on screen in a coherent movie. And rewatching it recently, it's kind of crazy to me how
it's still pretty good.
It holds up in a way of like it actually kind of completes a character arc for Batman that does make sense across all three of those first three movies. It's really kind of interesting how out of all four of them, Batman Forever is actually I arguably the one that's about Batman the most. You know, Batman '89 is more about kind of the war of attrition and rise of both Batman and the Joker and the battle for who's going to come out on top in Battle for the Soul of Gotham City. And Batman Returns gives equal footing to Batman, Catwoman, and Penguin. But Batman Forever, all the characters kind of contribute to Batman and his state and it's the whole thing about should he still be Batman? Why is he Batman? And it's more rewarding when you do have those first two films that kind of lead into the Batman Forever. And a lot of the Schumacher cut stuff actually enhances that even more. It drives that point home even more.
Oh yeah, big time.
But the whole sequence with the cave and they expand upon the Red Diary. I mean, just the connection between he and his father, and they touch upon that very, very, very minimal in the movie where he mentions how his father will never write in the diary again. But there's so much more to explore with that subplot.
Yeah. Lauer, you haven't got to talk.
I was going to say you mentioned. Let it rip. Okay, well, perfect timing because you mentioned Two-Face, and then obviously the other villain is the Riddler, and 8-year-old Ryan was the prime. I say was the prime target for Warner Brothers. I think with Batman Forever and bringing in Jim Carrey, I was fascinated with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
I loved Jim Carrey. Yeah. So when I'd found out and seen him pictured as the Riddler, I was losing my mind, and so I think I annoyed my parents to death on any kind of Batman Forever merchandise anywhere. Can we please go get it? Can we get it? Can we get it? And my favorite attire I always wore together when I get dressed up real nice was wearing a Batman Forever ball cap and a Batman Forever t-shirt. And I wore that everywhere until it fell apart. And I think Batman Forever, like, I don't know perception from an adult's perspective at the time, so maybe Bill can chime in here, but it's, from a kid's perspective, it was just like, this Riddler is awesome. Even though now I think with distance, you can kind of see there's always the criticism of Jim Carrey just being Jim Carrey, which has there ever been an actor that had such an impactful 3-year career in movies as Carrey? Or I don't even know if it was 3 years. It was
there's
2
a lot
years
of Gorshin in there though. Like he pays tribute. There's a lot of Gorshin in
94 alone.
Yeah. Well, at the time I hadn't seen Gorshin. I was kind of somehow unaware of
really
60s series. Yeah, because it wasn't playing on reruns on TV land yet, and so we were kind of limited with exposure, as a kid in the 90s. So it was only after I'd seen the 60s and then thought this guy's copying Jim Carrey, and then I started to get smarter and realized, wait, no, one came first and it was the 60s. So, okay.
Well,
but
the only exposure
it
at
still
the time
didn't bother me. It didn't bother me that Carrey was like that, though. I don't know. And even watching it, I watched it the other day, and I'm like, it's still, he's being Jim Carrey. And at the time, that's what people wanted from Jim Carrey.
Yeah. There was no, that was a casting coup at the time. I remember, because he was he was like the hottest entertainment commodity there was, at that point. But I don't know. I kind of disagree with Pete about him doing a lot of Gorshin. I think there's a lot of John Astin in his performance.
Okay.
Batman Forever, and I'm kidding. So
Pete, get your Riddler straight. Come on.
I was like, well, no, because he did play the Riddler later on. He the mustache Riddler.
Clearly he's.
And I was like, I'll have to go rewatch those.
It's a nod to Gorshin. Even the costuming in the movie is a nod to that. But
where'd the pink hair come from?
I never thought this is ridiculous at any point. In fact, if you just talk about his performance, you say what you want about the way the characterization and some of the plot involving the Riddler. but Jim Carrey, his performance was he was pretty brilliant of what he did, in that film. And on the other hand, as great of an actor as Tommy Lee Jones is, his Two-Face is just, for me that's the weakest. There's two weak parts I don't like about Forever. I'm not a fan of Tommy Lee Jones and Two-Face, and you can say, well, that's how the character is written, but there's a little bit. It seems like he's trying to up the
match Jim Carrey.
Yeah. And not a big fan of the box, plot, the Riddler plot.
It's very Mad Hatter.
That's a little, far-fetched for me. I wish it had been something just a tad more grounded. I mean, I can see how you could do that without having you just stick something on somebody's forehead but those are just some small misgivings about the film for me personally, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment. And there are some good Two-Face moments. I think I personally love his introduction, that speech he gives.
It's great. It's great.
And then at the at the end, you've always been a good friend to me, Bruce. Blah blah blah, and that's a good point. But I think the highlight is that that opening introduction of Two-Face, the whole the cold opening for the most part. And what's interesting is the opening of the film is completely different with the Red Diary cut of the movie. It's
pretty intense.
Different. Yeah.
Showing how Two-Face escapes.
Yeah. So I mean, all in all, I mean, I think that Jim Carrey was excellent, in the film, and I think there's, like I said before, there's a lot of retroactive, uber criticizing of this film. You know what I mean?
Well, I think as you'd kind of mentioned, it's always, for whatever reason, when the next phase comes out, we have to shit on the previous phase. So when Nolan movies came out, man, it was like just crap all over Burton, crap all over Batman Forever, and I mean, everybody's already crapped on Batman and Robin. And then once we went to the next phase,
we were like, that's never going to happen again with the Nolan movies, but boy, it sure did.
It happened. And so I think unfairly, and there's such a... In the 90s, this movie worked, and like you kind of said too, of how successful it was on like all quadrants across the board. At the time, it worked, and so it's kind of unfair of, well, life's different now, movies are different now, everything's different now. We can't say, well, if this movie came out today, it's different. This movie wouldn't have come out today, but at the time it did come out, it worked.
I think part of the thing that gives it a little bit of helps it hold up today. Not that it really holds up well, but holds up a bit, is that it does have the neon, the atmosphere of the film is very very comic booky. You know what I mean? The colors that pop, and even Schumacher said that he was trying to make a living comic book. So it's not. I don't think it's. I don't know if dated is the word, but there's some things that do date.
Well, he's talking about having a beeper.
That's where I was going for right there. So that certainly. I
still think it holds up really well. I mean, the action scenes are really good. The introduction to the movie is fantastic. You got the not the ballroom scene, but the Two-Face heist after where Batman jumps into the tube and then Batman comes out of the fire. That's a great Batman moment, and it's even better because then Robin saves him in the Flying Grayson's leotard. So that's an also great moment. And then what the hell did you think you were doing? Like that whole sequence is fantastic. And
I think it does kind of meet a little bit of the timeless quality, because even I think minus the beeper and the neon, there's some shots of Gotham that are really cool and doesn't give it time specific. And then the police cars and stuff looks very, I don't know if you'd say 50s, but I think I've seen it referenced of almost Batman Forever is a little like 50s Batman influence, and I can see that in some of the movie, and I think that makes it a little more timeless too. And I'm like, I like that aesthetic of it.
I mean, they were trying to pivot from '89 from the Burton aesthetic, to make it look completely different. And give
that aspect didn't look so
new.
different. I mean, Burton still had like giant sculptures of people. It's just Schumacher made them even bigger, and then he made them hold like streets and highways.
Yeah,
It was very interesting what he did with just architecture. And Barbara Ling was such a force in those two movies. Like, say what you want about Batman and Robin, but it was so interesting looking. So
I want more Arkham Asylum.
Mr. Uslan will say that Batman Forever is an homage to the late 40s, 50s Batman for sure, with the giant pianos that Batman and Robin ran on, and all this, that sort of stuff. Right before it went off, the comics went off the rails and became like very sci-fi, by the end of the 50s and into the early 60s,
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely some comic book aesthetic history, Batman history in it. And, think about when Joel Schumacher was reading Batman comics. Is probably in the late 40s,
50s.
well, the 50s for sure. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not just aesthetic either. Like the thing that really jumps out to me is how Batman himself is portrayed. Like, he's a dang chatterbox in this movie compared to 89 or Returns. Like,
he's also out in the public too,
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't see Keaton doing what Kilmer does in this movie. Like, he just has so many lines. He just talks a lot. That's just not something that they did. They had a concerted effort that Batman is kind of in the shadows. He doesn't say much. It's weird if he does this or that. And they open Batman up quite a bit in Batman Forever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of great Batman dialogue in the film.
Yeah.
I like the part where he saves Dick Grayson from the gang.
Yeah,
and
those are great.
He's beating on. He's Dick Grayson's. You could have saved him. And he says, if Bruce Wayne would have given his life to save your family, he would have. It's just some good parts, and then that leads into the whole cave thing, and it's just Well, later on, it ties in, and then at the end when he is ultimately accepts Dick Grayson as a partner, it all works throughout. The build up through the movie.
Yeah, and I just like the way that they were able to use that continuity in the earlier movies when times where Dick Grayson's like, your parents weren't murdered by a crazy psychopath, and Bruce is like, yeah, they were. Do some research, bro.
Yeah,
but,
One thing I've asked it, and this was 8-year-old me seeing this, but the big bat in the movie. Did any of you think that? Oh my gosh, Man-Bat's in Batman Forever.
Yeah.
I don't remember thinking that. But I remember there's an article in Batman on Film that was written, 15 years ago. It was for the 10th anniversary of Batman Forever. And it details the Red Diary cut. It's titled Batman Forever, the movie that could have been. And it talks about the rumor, the scuttlebutt that Man-Bat was in it. So that wasn't like some off the wall theory. People actually believed it. And there was some juice behind it because there kind of is a Man-Bat, a giant bat. If you're gonna do Man-Bat, he would kind of look like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just let's talk. I mean, talk a little bit, Ryan, and everybody about the. Okay, I'll just ask this question for y'all. Would you give up the theatrical cut in that cold opening that we all kind of like or love for the Schumacher / Red Diary cut that has a completely different opening than Batman Forever? And I do think that it does make Batman Forever a better quote unquote film than the popcorn flick that we got. No offense to it being a popcorn flick, because like I said, I kind of love the movie, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
100%. I would love to see the Schumacher cut, because the bank heist is always going to be in the movie. It's just not
in the movie. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the film really has the whole backbone of the movie is Batman, and all the Schumacher stuff it's all Schumacher, but all of that Red Diary stuff just makes the movie a little bit more balanced. It would further separate it from what happened with Batman and Robin, I think.
And honestly, like, this is going to sound funny, but a lot of that Schumacher stuff that was cut, I said the Red Diary. I did it myself, Ryan. But that's in the extra features of the DVD.
Yeah,
you can watch it. Everything except for the original ending of the movie is in the extra features.
So I don't know if it's everything.
Well, majority.
But there's some stuff. All the plot points get
the Two-Face escape is what I'm mostly concerned about.
Yeah, but there's even things like the Riddler leaving Riddles to throw Batman off of the trail. Like there's a whole scene where Batman goes to like a beauty salon instead of where they're, and that makes the heists that when you questions like, geez, why didn't Batman stop Two-Face and the Riddler from robbing all that bank? That's because Batman was led astray. Like, and that's it. There's cool
it also
stuff
makes
like
him feel more like the Riddler than the Mad Hatter.
That's what I'm saying.
Like it's like Batman's got to figure this stuff out. So like I'm a little upset that stuff like that got cut. But I mean, I remember. I feel like back then a lot of movies were 2 hours. I feel like as we've gotten older, these comic book movies have become progressively longer.
There was cuts to it that wasn't to lighten it up. It was we got to have this under 2 hours. You know what I mean? So
and anything that's a subplot, it's easy to get rid of. But there's some great scenes in there. I mean, there's one scene where Bruce and Alfred have this discussion about why he became Batman and why is he doing it, and then Bruce says this great line about like, am I just trying to outrun the fear? And then Michael Goff's Alfred says, yeah, but then you became the fear. And just listening to him say those words, that version of Alfred is like really interesting to me, and it would be great to see like a fully realized version of that to put alongside the other two movies.
So the self-plug, the Batman Book Club podcast that I host, actually 12 a.m. on June 16th, an episode will be available where we dissect the novelization of the movie. And nice. I think that is, of course, I don't know like what in there that the author wrote and added, or what was, this was originally part of the original script, but I think that's the most complete Red Diary cut, Schumacher cut, whatever you want to call it, I think that we'll ever get. And kind of as you guys alluded to, there were a lot of things that were shot and are included as the deleted scenes on DVD, Blu-ray, etc. But then there's also a lot of stuff that I don't know if it ever was shot. And I think collectively, if the novelization is based on the original script, it changes the tone and changes a lot of perception of how the movie is, including a ton of, because Bill, I remember reading what you'd put with the Red Diary cut, because that was the first I think that I'd ever heard of it, and so I don't exactly remember all the points that were included, but the Red Diary plays a much bigger part. It's not just Thomas Wayne wrote in the diary, you know what is written in the diary and how that factors into Batman Forever.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is he's the guilt he feels. He feels guilty that he wanted to go to the theater and blah blah blah, and his parents are killed, and in the Red Diary it explains that through his father that it wasn't his fault, that's what they wanted to do. And there's also even just the scenes that we see that are available from that didn't make it to the final cut would flesh out that film way better. I'm sure there's stuff that was filmed that we didn't see that hasn't been released. I mean, in the novelization, there's even more that ties in Batman's relationship to Harvey Dent. There's a scene in the book that he meets Harvey Dent on the rooftop while he is district attorney, and I remember. I just wish that had been in the film after when I read the book after I saw the movie. So I don't know if that scene was filmed, but it would be it kind of works in with the relationship and then Harvey wanting to kill him, the escape, from Arkham, and the Bat Must Die written in blood, and then at the end I'd mentioned you always been a good friend to me, Bruce. Toward during the climax. So yeah, I just there's a lot to that movie that I do think it would be better, even though I do very fond of the movie.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reshuffling. I think most notably is in the novelization, the opening heist with Two-Face or whatever. That takes a while until in the book that actually happens. Whereas in the movie, and it makes total sense that they would say we need to get. This is a new Batman. This is a more fun Batman movie.
It's
than
like
the
a James
last one.
Bond opening. Yeah.
So we need to open this with that. Let's reshuffle. And because the Wayne Enterprises meeting with Nigma actually happened before that. And
that's why you see him look at the bat signal, and why he's trying to get the hell out of there,
And then I think it's kind of out of nowhere, not even middle of the movie, but the chase in the streets with Two-Face and his gang. Mm-hmm. Initially in the novelization, that when Batman jumps off the roof after Chase tries to seduce him, and he says, "Women." Actually, that chase concludes or follows him in the Batmobile, whereas in the movie, it's kind of like, out of nowhere, Batman's just running away from Two-Face. So it's not a big deal, but I think if that was the original movie, like you said, it can just flesh it out better and does connect a little more. And I think the exclamation point is when he says, "Batman, not because I have to be, but I choose to be." That would make a lot more sense than. Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the title, Batman Forever. Yeah.
The title just never fit. I never liked the title because I was like, this has nothing to do with.
I love the title as a kid. I'm like, it sounds awesome.
I like that. Well, I love the title, and I loved the symbol for the movie of the question mark.
The logo
symbol in it. That was awesome. But yeah, I never thought Batman Forever because I don't have to be, and I'm kind of like, well, I didn't feel the struggle really, in a sense, I think it's a little mucky.
In the Red Diary cut, there's a lot of things that I mean, it's still quick, but there's more pressure on Batman and Bruce in terms of why are you doing this? Why not retire? The police are handling this. Chase is influencing him. We haven't talked about Chase Meridian a lot, but that's a really interesting character. She's not just arm candy. I mean, it's somebody there that's supposed to kind of be the meridian between Batman and Bruce Wayne. And, you have Two-Face. You have Two-Face as kind of Batman's villain. Riddler is Bruce Wayne's villain. And you have Dick Grayson mirroring what happened to Bruce as a kid. Then you have Chase Meridian that's kind of trying to help... unknowingly for a while, help Bruce kind of put all those threads together and figure out why he is Batman, why he continues to be Batman, and if he should even be Batman.
Yeah, I mean, so like she's helping, she's with Bruce. There's a little bit of the Superman Clark Kent thing there. She's in love with Batman, quote unquote love, but she doesn't care much for Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? So there's that aspect, but she's she's helping Bruce also at the same time deal with his stuff, his issues, and that's there's a little weight there instead of her just being like Bruce Wayne's girlfriend. Let's just and another thing is she was supposed to be played by Renee Russo. That's who was originally cast in the role, and.
Until Keaton left.
Keaton was going to do it. Keaton got fitted. They had costumes made, Batman Forever costumes made, built for Keaton. So
the pivot came with Keaton because he was going to do it mainly for the money, but he was asking for a huge pay increase from returns, and when and they were almost going to do it, but it was going to be him and Renee Russo and Robin Williams as the Riddler, but then when the way the story goes is that when Robin Williams people found out about the big payday for Keaton, he wanted a big payday too, and then when all that kind of escalated, Warner Brothers was like, okay, can we just put the brakes on this and recast people? And then
and it's almost happened. There had to be a part of Joel Schumacher that was like, kind of want to cast my own Batman,
Well, that's what I was going to say is like, riddle me this, Bill. I've heard that Keaton originally wanted to, or was going to do it, but it was going to be a prequel, and yet Burton didn't get far along, and then he was invited to leave, but then Keaton only wanted to do it if Burton was going to do it, but then if he's getting fitted, well, then they must have been further
No, they were always
going to do it.
Yeah, they were always going to do Batman Forever. I mean, they were going to do that film. That wasn't going to be a prequel. That's something that Keaton has brought up in the years afterwards that
he would have wanted to have done.
He would have wanted to do a prequel. But it was going to be a sequel to Batman Returns. They did invite Burton to leave, and they did bring in Joel Schumacher. And that's another thing. It's like people think that only thing Joel Schumacher's ever done is Batman and Robin. He was a very well thought of director when he got that gig, and he was given that job. I remember the story was they told him we want to offer you our number one highest priority IP,
Mm-hmm.
and he did Batman.
So they told the writers.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, I would think there was part of him. I mean, and with Warner Brothers that they weren't like completely super sad that Michael Keaton decided not to do it. But he was going to do it. I mean, he was going to do it. He was fitted for costumes. They made costumes for his stature. Rene Russo was cast as Chase Meridian. And then once they went with Val Kilmer, who...
so all of that... All of that casting and the fitting, Schumacher was attached at that point still.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. And Tim Burton kind of, I mean, he was pretty hands-off, obviously. They kept him on as a producer, but really, as far as I know, he was there. He didn't not do anything, but he was there to help the transition in terms of talking to Schumacher a little bit, getting him set up. And Burton did meet with the writers. He kind of had to sign off with the writers, too, of like, okay, these people kind of know what they're doing.
Well, he also had
put his little stamp of approval at the very beginning of the project.
He had that scene-stealing cameo at the end.
You have that. There was. It was the Bachelors who wrote the original script.
Yes,
with the Riddler and the Rat.
And that is I guess why Burton was kind of godfathering that phase of it.
Yes,
and then there was of course Akiva.
Yeah,
Goldsman came in and did the rewrite, polished it up, whatever you want to call it. That ended up being the movie, and still
he was the one that came in after Carey, because the Bachelors wrote the script with Robin Williams in mind, and that's part of why Williams signed on, because he thought that they really nailed his voice. And
did they? What was originally they called him? He was Lyle something.
Yeah, they gave him a goofy name. Yeah.
Lyle something. I forget the last name. It wasn't Edward Nygma. It wasn't Edward Nash, and it was Lyle.
I'm gonna try to find it because it's goofy as all hell.
So and that's the history of that during that 3-year process after Return. So I completely. I mean, I got Val Kilmer in my mind.
Lyle Heckendorf.
That's it.
That's it. Lyle Heckendorf.
And his rival company was called Hectech.
Yeah. Golly.
Thank goodness.
Well, because at the time they obviously didn't watch the animated series, because at that point that would have been a good place for a Riddler influence and Riddler origin. But other than that, there really wasn't too much explicit Riddler backstory or origin stuff, and so they kind of had to invent it.
Mm-hmm.
Arkham kind of reinvented the Riddler for a modern age recently. So Well,
speaking of Arkham, we get Arkham Asylum for the first time in Batman Forever. There's so many elements of Batman Forever overall.
Wayne Enterprises, exactly,
that make it the most comics accurate, in terms of landmarks and things that out of the four in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and also playing up the Playboy aspect of Bruce Wayne, the he's on all those magazine covers, and so forth, and he's got Gossip Gertie, wanting to know about his love life and so forth. And yeah, I mean, you didn't see that from Bruce Wayne in the other two films. In fact, I mean, like, it's one of my pet peeves about Batman '89. No one knows what Bruce Wayne looks like. An investigative reporter for a newspaper doesn't know who Bruce Wayne is. I mean, so yeah, that's something else you could say from the comics that was used pretty well in Batman Forever.
Yeah,
Forever does a good job of nailing Batman. I mean, he's very heroic. He's very.
He is heroic. Yes,
it's the most. It might be the most. It's probably the most heroic of the original four. Batman's always, whenever Batman's on the screen, he's usually saving somebody, and the only time that people really die is when Batman can't suit up to save the Graysons. So Batman's always really in a position to save people, and he's always the beam of light throughout this movie.
Agree, 100%.
Riddle me this, riddle me that.
It's not as quotable as '89, but it's up there. I mean, Jim Carrey's got some good quotes. Tommy Lee Jones' opening monologue's good.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned it before. The Batcave scene. When after Dick Grayson saves Batman, is Batboy, Nightwing. What's a good sidekick name?
Yeah.
And he goes through the whole speech of, so you're willing to take a life. Well, here's how it's going to be. Blah blah blah.
And see, that whole thing is a super underrated part of the movie too, because they are dealing with a Batman who has, in this continuity, killed not just regular criminals, but like the Joker. And this is literally a Batman that's killed the Joker, and he's trying to relay his experience on killing a supervillain that's killed his parents to Dick Grayson, where a supervillain has killed his parents. I mean, it's a really fascinating thing that you don't get in many other Batman stories.
It probably goes over a lot of people, or people don't get that's what it's about.
Yeah, because they don't spell it out explicitly. It's there it's there to be rewarding if you've watched the other movies and actually put that in the same continuity. And it took me a long time to actually get to that point myself.
Really?
It's all
connecting, there. And opinions may vary on this. When they say the circus must be halfway to Metropolis by now, what were your guys'? Did you like that? Did you get a little giddy, or were you like
that's
eye
a
rolling, or
multiverse.
what did you think with
That's
that?
the
I just thought
multiverse.
that was cool.
I just thought it was a kind of just a little wink to the world of DC Comics. There's really. Who knows if Superman exists in that world, and if he does, what Superman is it? Is it Christopher Reeve's Superman? We could all debate. But
I like
it's
it because
Nicolas Cage. It's Nick Cage.
I think it's subtle, and it just lets the viewer just kind of imagine whatever you want. It's just little subtle.
But it's Nick Cage's Superman, of course.
It's much better than. And this is why Superman works alone in Batman.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
he gets name dropped in the next movie, and they almost had Burton do the Nicolas Cage version. So
that is correct.
What did you guys think of all the gadgets that he used? I feel like he used a hell of a lot of gadgets in this. They
were cool,
especially like, a lot of them in the opening sequence. But he was, the wire work and everything, all the grappling gun stuff was great too.
Yeah.
I mean, his technical.
I love the
Batmobile flying on
the
rooftops.
gadgets. Yeah,
love
it.
Having the Batmobile drive up the roof, like that's cool stuff.
I think I envision the
Batwing protecting me in the fire.
There,
like they really go out of their way to give you a bunch of new.
That is the Batmobile going up the wall is a overt wink to Batman, the '60s Batman series of it when they used to climb up the wall. That has been mentioned before.
I think it's. And I love it. Like, it never once I'm like, well, of course he gets out of it. He's Batman. Duh. Right? Like, it was never an issue for me. Like, well, how's he get the car off of the top of the building?
I
don't care. He's Batman,
say.
whatever.
I really didn't care. But then afterwards, I'm going like, how did he get down?
Yeah.
Because it's, of course, we see in Batman Begins, he's just, rolling over the rooftops and, in the tumbler and all that stuff. So
I think more than the gadgets or even the Batmobile, I always and still do love the most, I think, at the end of the Enigma Tech party when he jumps off the roof and they do this really cool
the big CG
camera falling with him and going up and around him sort of thing. Like that I think you could freeze that at any point and that'd be like that's a panel from a comic book for sure, and his cape flapping as he's jumping off a roof. I always thought that just looked really cool.
Yeah,
I love it when he makes his entrance. That's great when he goes through the glass, because that reminds me of '89 in the museum. And then when he jumps onto that water thing and he does the backflip. I know it's not Kilmer, but it's just the fight choreography. Cool. Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Or when he confronts Dick Grayson after he took the Batmobile on a joyride, he jumps off that big thing. Like
I think that's a big. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say real fast. I mean that's they go out of their way to really work around the limitations of the bat suit in Batman Forever. They really make him look cool and do cool things with the cape and use CG more than the other ones now that it's progressed a little bit to kind of really make him more of a comic book character in terms of what he can do.
And he has a lot more like hand-to-hand combat fighting, I think, than Returns too. Which is also it's also a little funny because I think I showed it to the fiance, the Mira, friend. She'd never seen it before, and she kind of thought, that this one was maybe a little bit more violent than Returns, because though aesthetically darker, Returns is darker, and it's got the gooey stuff coming out of Penguin's mouth, but this one had, hand-to-hand punching, kicking, people just shooting like with guns and stuff, and I don't disagree with that. It was presented a little, what do you want to say? Not cartoony in the sense of like eye rolling, but like it wasn't gritty.
Right.
In like, oh, that's disgusting sort of fighting. But I think it was, aside from 89, definitely more of that than what was present in Returns.
And, and that's not a bad thing, because you do want to see Batman fight. I mean, now, I don't know if I want to see him stick a bomb down a strong man's pants and blow him to bits, or use the Batmobile's exhaust to set someone on fire, and burn them to death. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely more. There's more fighting, Batman fighting, quote unquote, in Forever than there is any of those. Maybe even including, I don't even remember about Batman and Robin how much. I mean, there's so much goofy stuff that you kind of forget.
Which is it's interesting. Batman and Robin has probably the most hand-to-hand combat between Batman and an actual villain. Like he actually fist fights Mr. Freeze a lot, but he doesn't really get into fights with the main villains too much in most of these movies, right?
Yeah.
Boom, hot take. we found it out here. The most hand-to-hand fighting with the main villain.
Well, I just think that's accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So, and seeing, I don't know, as a kid, seeing Batman and Robin team up for the first time for their first mission. I mean, I just thought that was super cool, and I like the way that the Robin suit looks, and it matches aesthetically. I think it would almost, with some tweaks, would have matched Keaton's Batman too, like the way that they kind of mold you get the gauntlets.
You talking about the suit at the end?
Yes.
Yeah. I've always really liked that Robin suit, and I wish that he'd gotten to do more in it, because it seems like he puts it on and then basically just needs saved from Batman the rest of the movie. And I'm like, man, I really wish that there could have been some ass-kicking Robin in that suit. And then I didn't like that they changed it in the next movie, because I was like,
next movie it's gone.
I really liked it. I had that.
I wanted more time with the more traditional Robin.
I loved that action figure where it was in that suit and stuff too. And still to this day, I think it's that and that black Batman suit with it. More so than, because I always get confused. The Panther suit is the suit that starts the movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the sonar suit is at the end.
Okay, because I like Robin's suit, and I think pairing that with the Panther suit, I think that's a cool.
And we didn't get to see that.
Yeah, that's true.
No, except in silhouette at the very end.
At the same time. Yeah. He's in the sonar suit when Robin shows up in his new Alfred-made Robin outfit.
The adventures going on in Ryan's bedroom growing up, those suits were side by side saving the world from G.I.
Well,
Joes.
not only that, but you had like the Bat vehicles too. You got the Bat boat and the Bat wing, like at the end of the movie too, like a new Bat wing. I thought that was pretty awesome too.
Yeah, I like both of those too.
Yeah, they're good. But there's some good Batman vehicles in in that movie for sure. I think the Batmobile is underrated. It's a good looking Batmobile.
Yeah,
you know?
we were talking about that in our text threads. I think our consensus was that it's the weakest of the 3 Burton Schumacher ones, but that to me that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like it's still, I think it's really cool. It looks weird. It looks scary. It looks like a Batmobile. I always like the rib cage view.
Compared over the convertible one in Batman and Robin.
Oh, I think convertible one's the worst.
I do.
Talk to Garrett Grev. He was like, "No, I like the Batman and Robin one better."
Grev likes the Batman.
I think so.
Okay, well, I mean, look, I don't completely hate it. I'm just saying it. I like. Look, I don't want to get off on a Batman and Robin tangent, but I will say, I appreciate the fact that it's an homage to the '60s series because the '60s series was a convertible. I mean, that's why. But I mean, if I had to choose which one I like better, forever, over the Batman and Robin one,
So that Christmas was the Batman Forever Christmas for Ryan. I got everything, and one was that Batmobile, and it was cool because in the front there was a button, and it shot out this big thing, big shield.
Didn't the fins in the back split just like in the movie?
Yes, they did.
I always thought that there was some magazine or something at the time that said like the split was to indicate that it was going over a certain mile per hour. Like when it was going really fast is when the wings would split open or something.
I have y'all talking about that. I have never been. The only time I was a child around a Batman movie or live action Batman is the '60s series, and there just wasn't the kind of merchandise.
Yeah, it was more of a hodgepodge
back then. But so all of my, it was a good thing that I think my daughter was 6 months for Christmas that year, and I remember I probably bought her some Batman Forever stuff, even though she was a girl and she was only 6 months old, just so I could quote unquote play with it. So there was
I'm in that mode right now. It's the best.
That as these movies went along, and I had 2 more kids, I would always, and my other 2, the next 2 were boys, so I was always able to get kind of buy,
You played with it through that.
Buy toys I would get the toys, but it was under the, the guys, they would be wrapped up for the kids, so yeah. But I did miss out as a child. But I mean, I had my mom and my grandmother made me Batman costumes. I mean, I put them up on the site before, and then I've got a helmet. Basically, you've probably seen it. It's blue.
The '60s helmet.
Yeah, I had that. I still have that. Yeah, I still have that.
Are you going to give that thing a fresh coat of paint?
Yeah. What's that?
Are you going to give it a fresh coat of paint? It looks a little.
I am. I'm going. That's my next goal. I'm gonna refurbish it. Yeah, I'm gonna paint it. I'm gonna make it look better. I'm gonna put it in the office because still have that. It came with a cape back then, but cape's long gone. And if you look on eBay, sometimes you can find like some of them that are still like in the box.
Yeah,
but they're being sold for tremendous amount of money.
I'm
sorry, I'm in the weeds again.
Well, speaking of eBay, I recently purchased, and what came in the mail as we started recording this podcast are the 4 glass mugs that McDonald's sold as a tie-in to Batman Forever. And I've never had these. I was never lucky enough that McDonald's was always, sold out. And I'm looking at these for the first time, and these things are awesome.
They're great.
Oh my God.
They're so detailed.
It's crazy.
They hold up. They last. Clearly,
Lowry, you use yours every day.
Every day.
Is this your coffee
every day
mug?
They go through just for my Mountain Dew because I'm still 8-year-old Ryan. But yeah, they're indestructible aside from you just throwing them on the ground. But these things have lasted 25 years of constant dishwasher use and whatever drink in them, and they are the best thing that I could ever think of. That was a movie tie-in at like one of the fast food. Like they just don't do that stuff anymore, and that's kind of too bad because that was I remember the fun I was 8, so of course I couldn't make any decisions when it comes to money, but it was like, can we please go to McDonald's? I want to get a Batman Forever glass. Please. I'll get whatever I need to eat so I can get the Batman Forever glass.
Oh, and they had a special burger too. They had a hero burger, I believe.
Was it a Bat Burger or Hero Burger?
I think it was called the Hero Burger. You have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure that they had a special burger. I remember that.
Too. Yeah, I have one of those left. I have the Riddler one.
It's really cool. The question mark is the question mark cane is the handle of your.
Yes. Yeah.
And though Two-Face is my least favorite in the movie, his glass, it's all coins. Like the flipping of the coin is the handle, and the detail in that. I know I'm getting on repeat now. It's just, oh my gosh, those are so good.
I need to complete my set. I've got Batman and Riddler.
Yeah. I thought you were a fan. Come on.
Oh geez.
Well, I got the laser disc. I just bought it on laser disc so I can watch it in another format.
That's funny.
Unfortunately, I mean, product-wise, unfortunately, the video game. I mean, this is a quick aside, but the Batman Forever video game. That's the worst. That's the worst series of Batman video games there
Forever,
is.
Right?
What was that?
It was terrible.
I said, what didn't they tie into for Forever?
They tied into pretty much everything. I mean, it was definitely the most. As a kid, the most saturated I got into in terms of stuff I got. You know, Batman and Robin was there, but it came and went pretty fast as far as I remember. But we want to start wrapping it up with any final thoughts about the movie and about what you might think the legacy is 25 years later. I mean, I think for me, I'll just go first. I mean, the biggest thing I think we've hit on here is, as a movie, it's kind of the interesting quintessential reboot before there's a reboot, and the most underrated thing I think the movie does, other than how it introduces Robin, is just how much of a through line it gives Batman and Bruce Wayne, and it builds on the other two movies in an interesting way. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a reboot, but it's more kind of a soft reboot, because it still holds on to the continuity of the previous two films, and yet it gives it a facelift and a fresh coat of paint and so forth, so to speak. I think it is. I don't know what its importance is in the grand scheme of Batman on film history or for comic book movie history. Maybe it is the fact that is the reboot aspect of it. It's not a reboot like Batman Begins, but it just that you can change gears. I don't know if has there been another series that has Batman Forever before?
We all thought the Hulk tried to do it.
Besides Batman?
We all
you can look at the Hulk
with the MCU. They kind of defined it a little bit more as time went on, but that's the closest we've got to it is Hulk, Angler's Hulk, Incredible Hulk.
All right, well then it's almost unique in its own regard, in that in those terms, if you look at it that way. But it makes it possible. It makes there's I've used the term before. Just Batman Forever. A new Superman film, for example, with Henry Cavill. If you don't want to, you don't have to acknowledge BVS or Justice League. Just pick up where Man of Steel left off and move forward and forget what you want to forget, and Batman Forever, if you will. But and I'll just say it's just like I said, it has a soft spot in my heart. It's the Batman film I watched probably the most with my kids when they were growing up, and it was a good palate cleanser for me personally, and I obviously for a lot of people because it did better than its predecessor, but it was a palate cleanser from Batman Returns, and I'll still break it out and watch it once or twice a year. There's some Batman things I won't watch again or don't watch very much. BVS, Batman Returns, but
how to get him in there?
I like Val Kilmer's Batman. I like him as Bruce Wayne. So he's kind of the George Lazenby of Batman.
That's a good comparison. Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on Batman Forever.
I don't think Batman Forever has the any of the Batman 60s show, the 89 or the Dark Knight kind of impact, but I still think it's at least for me an overly enjoyable chapter. I'm nostalgic for it for sure because I remember my feelings of seeing it as a kid, and I loved that movie so much. And now, of course, as an adult, because you get a little bit more cynical, and you could pick it apart and stuff. But overall, I mean, when I watched it the other night, it's still fun to watch. I still watch it a couple times a year and have fun, and I still would never change anything what Jim Carrey did in that movie because I think he's such a blast as the Riddler. So that's my. And I think about the movie every day when I use the Batman glasses.
It seems to me, talking to you three guys, y'all are all relatively the same age and within the same age range, right?
Yeah.
For the most part? Okay. Batman Forever to you all is a lot like Batman, the 60s TV series is for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know? Yeah. So I get what y'all are saying. I get when you say the 8-year-old, the 7-year-old, the whatever, and the toys, and I get that. You know, it's just it's funny. It has such a. Y'all saw it when you were in single digits. I saw it when I was about to about to turn 30. So
for me, it's my first exposure to really Batmania. Like, I'm born in 86. So, like, 89 came and went, and I had no idea what it was. So this is really my first bit of exposure from just merchandise, toys, music videos, all that stuff. This is my first Batmania. So, like, there's a lot of nostalgia for Batman Forever and just being able to see it open
Were y'all all Batman fans before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 89's 89.
Okay.
But, like, I've never, this is the first Batman movie I saw in the theater, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I didn't see Batman Returns in 92. I don't even remember.
I don't remember the definitive moment that I became a Batman fan. I've asked my parents and they don't remember. They just say, oh, you always loved Batman. I just think that Forever was the first time I was aware of, like, I was watching TV and seeing the marketing everywhere as opposed to when Returns came out. Because when Returns came out, I was like, 4 or 5 or whatever the hell age I was then.
Yeah, I
just more aware.
Yeah, I was like, I watched Batman 66 in daycare and then saw Batman Returns in the theater when I was 4. And like I said, that was just enough for me to be like, I like Batman. Here's a movie, but Batman Forever was the first time I vividly remember being aware of, like, oh, there's a movie coming. I've told this story before, but I remember not knowing the movie existed, watching TV one day, and all of a sudden seeing a trailer for it, a commercial for it, and I remember saying to myself, oh, it's so beautiful, and like crying because I was so excited, because as a kid, between the age of 4 and 7, that's an eternity, to wait for the next Batman movie. And so I just couldn't have been more excited for
really quickly. I just think that's funny that you go from watching the 60s series and then your next Batman is Batman Returns.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've talked about that before. Like, 60s series, Batman Returns, and of course the animated series. It's like all these like Batman things happening at once, making you realize that, like, hey, this character works in all these different, methods and forms, and it's cool. Batman's forever.
He's been around for 80 plus years, boys. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So, do we have any plugs or things we want to talk about before we get out?
Please do me a favor. Listen to my own personal podcast, the Straight_O_G podcast, hosted with me and everyone's favorite Long Island boy, Eric Q. Holzman. The Q is for Quincy because his parents were big fans of the Mr. Magoo television show.
He also raps your opening intro.
He does.
You throw that in there, okay?
He drops bars. Follow me on Instagram and social media, and all forms of social media at Pete Illustrated. And I would love to continue to talk more Batman Forever. And if you're interested in the Red Diary edition, tomorrow tweet out release the Schumacher cut for the film's official 25th anniversary, because that is when the film came out, right? June 26th, June 16th. Yep. So June 16th. It all comes together. It's all connected, as Bill likes to say.
It's all connected. Yeah.
I love saying that. It's all got to connect.
It's all connected.
It all must connect.
Yeah. I have my own podcast, The Batman Book Club, on Twitter at The Batman BC, and actually at 12 a.m. June 16th, it will be available. As I said earlier, the newest episode where Rob Myers from the Robin Everyone Loves the Drake podcast joins me, and we go through almost chapter by chapter of this Batman Forever novelization. And Like I also said, I think the closest to a Schumacher cut that we'll ever have is in that novelization. So no reading required. You can just listen, and we go through it pretty extensively on some changes and movie to book, book to movie, which we prefer, blah, 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 all of that. And so, look for that. And then also on BOF, I've written the Watchmen Blu-ray /digital release review, and part 2 of that will be coming up when I'm able to get through all of those extras that come with it, because I'm such an extras guy. But if you hear this and you haven't watched or bought Watchmen, buy it and then watch it, because it's A+ material.
Awesome.
For me, let's see. You can follow me on Twitter at Batman on Film. I run this little website called Batman on Film. You can check it out on the interwebs. And some new. I've been on Ryan's podcast, Ryan Lauer's podcast. We talked about Batman Year 100.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. I've got 2 things coming up. I am doing a little nod to Batman Forever in written form, which should be up tomorrow.
Lovely.
And I also have a part 2 of an op-ed, one I wrote a couple years ago about Batman and Batfleck. That version needs to stay in the periphery, or he can exist in the periphery, and I'm going to expand upon that now that he definitely needs to stay in the periphery now, especially with the Batman coming. So that's all I got, boys.
Cool. Well, of course, follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan, and the Batman Podcast Network at BatPod Network. And just keep your ear to the ground in terms of when this 3-hour Dennis O'Neil interview is going to come out. It'll come out imminently. I'll just say that. So that will wrap up today's episode for the 15th anniversary of Batman Begins, which we just didn't really talk about, but we mostly talked about the 25th anniversary of Batman Forever. For Pete, Ryan, and Bill, I'm Ryan. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Jett.BatmanOnFilm. Email Jett via Jett@batman-on-film.com. I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.